All right, Ian, thank you. Next week, a man convicted of killing a St. Paul police officer more than 50 years ago will be up for parole for the 4th time. But Officer James Sackett's family is not in favor of Ronald Reed getting out.
Maury Glover sat down with the head of the Department of Corrections to find out what the Supervised Release Board will be looking at to determine whether Reed should be released from prison.
I think this is unfair, unjust.
James Sackett's family says they've been serving a life sentence since the St. Paul police officer was gunned down in the line of duty back in 1970. So they don't understand why one of the men convicted of killing him could get out of serving a life sentence too.
We are constantly fighting to try to find justice.
Certainly the feeling of the Sackett family is utterly understandable.
Department of Corrections Commissioner Paul Schnell says since Ronald Reed was sentenced to life in prison under the guidelines from 1970 when Sackett's murder occurred, he was eligible for parole after 17 years behind bars. Schnell says by law, the Supervised Release Board must consider 12 factors when hearing Reed's request for parole later this month, including his behavior while incarcerated, his rehabilitation efforts, and his criminal history, in addition to input from the victim when deciding whether to grant him supervised release.
The role of the parole board is not to determine justice. That's the role of the court. The role of the parole board is to determine whether or not the person poses a risk to public safety.
Schnell says the fact that Reed spent years in the community without committing crimes before he was arrested and convicted in Sackett's murder in the mid-2000s, has no disciplinary record in prison, and is 75 years old, all point to a lower risk of Reed reoffending if he were to get out.
You can't make up for the loss of life that was caused here. You can't fix that. You can't bring somebody back.
Schnell says he'll be one of the 5 board members who will ultimately decide Reed's fate, but it won't be easy.
These are decisions that, are exceedingly difficult because it's oftentimes leaves the feeling of somebody's a winner and somebody's a loser. And that's not the feeling that the board wants to leave anybody with.
Reed is scheduled to go before the Supervised Release Board on Tuesday, August 11th, and Commissioner Schnell says a decision on his parole should come that same afternoon. In St. Paul, Maury Glover, Fox 9.